To watch these important lessons, subscribe to DP Education's YouTube channel right now. Click on the bell icon to stay updated on the latest lessons. Sri Lanka's largest free online school, DP Education.
So my dear children, in the earlier parts, we have discussed several things related to the space and about our moon and the rotations, about the revolutions of the several planets and about the earth, and we discussed several things, other things related to the planets and the solar system. So now within this part, we'll be discussing about a kind of an incident that's going to occur within the space because of the rotations and the revolutions of the planets and moon. Okay, especially here we are discussing about because of the revolution of moon around our earth and because of the revolution of earth around the sun, two phenomena or two marvelous incidents can be observed within our space. So these two marvelous incidents are referred as solar eclipses and the lunar eclipses. Solar eclipses and lunar eclipses. So my dear children, here it is given important incidents associated with the solar system. So marvelous scenes that can be observed in the sky are eclipses, and there are two types of eclipses. So as I mentioned, there are two types of eclipses. So you know that earth, moon and sun, when they align in a straight line, when these things align in a straight line, these marvel incidents can be observed. So this is mainly happening, or this is mainly occurring because of the Umbra and Penumbra, or the shadows of the moon or else of the earth. These things are mainly occurring because of the shadows. So if the shadow of the moon is going to cover the surface of the earth, if the shadow of the moon is going to cover up the surface of the earth, so in that case, for that particular area which the shadow is being obtained, so those people around those areas will not be able to clearly see that the people who are living inside that certain area will not be able to clearly observe the sun, right? As a bright star or as a bright light source, the people will not be able to observe it. It's because of the shadow of the moon. So can demonstrate it like this in simple. So this is the sun. It's somewhat larger in size. Then this is our planet Earth. So you know that around our Earth, moon is going to rotate, right? So the light rays which are coming like this and falling on the earth like this. So here so as you can see here, my dear children, this is the moon. So this is sun, I'll mention as S. So this is moon, mentioned as M, and this larger one is the earth. So the people who are living in this area, people who are living in this certain area will not be able to clearly see, right? Will not be able to clearly observe, right? These people who are living in near to this area. So I'll I'll take somewhat larger part like this. Now it's okay. Now you can see it very clearly. So this is our Earth. So people around this area will not be able to clearly observe the shadow of or the light which is given out by the sun, because as you can see here, it's very clear to us, the moon is going to cover up, right? The moon is going to cover up a certain surface, right? A certain surface by the shadow of it. So the people around this area will not directly observe the sun. So normally people who are around in this area will be able to, those guys will observe the darkness during daytime. Suddenly like the entire environment is going to be black, like the evening or like in the night. Sun is going to disappear suddenly. Actually, it's not going to disappear, but what the thing which is going to happen here is the shadow of the moon is going to fall on the earth, so that the people around here will not be able to observe the sun or the sunlight. It happens because when the sun, moon and the earth align in a straight line, and moon is going to come in between earth and sun like this. So in this incident, or within this phenomena, my dear children, the people who are around here will not be able to see the sun, because moon is going to eclipse the sun. Okay, moon is going to eclipse the sun. So this is referred as a solar eclipse. This phenomena is referred as a solar eclipse. Solar eclipse. Because suddenly the brightness or the light given out by the sun will not be received to a certain area. Okay, to a certain area, the light will not be received. So that incident is referred as that incident is called as or referred as the solar eclipse. Okay, solar eclipse. So the people who are around in this area will be able to observe the total solar eclipse. Why did I mention it as a total solar eclipse? It's because that you know that if you take a shadow, if you take any kind of a shadow, in a shadow, my dear children, there are two main areas. In a shadow, there are two main areas, right? Like this. If you keep a ball in front of a light source, we'll assume that one as a candle. You are going to keep a ball in front of a candle, and now you are going to observe the shadow received by the ball, right? Now you have to obtain that thing to a certain screen or to a certain different board or something like that. When you observe it, you can observe two different portions or two different areas. In the earlier grades, you have observed, and I think you have learned this thing, right? Like in the previous grade, in the grade 7, we are studying about these things. Okay, so these two areas are referred as, so the main area, the darker one, is called as the umbra, and this area which is somewhat lighter the area somewhat lighter than the umbra is called lighter in the sense here. Lighter in the sense means it's somewhat blurred. Okay, so this is referred as this area is referred as penumbra. So according to this figure, my dear children, now this is the umbra which covers which is going to be in very dark color, right? The shadow is in very dark color, right? Sharp dark color. However, the outer surface, the penumbra part, is somewhat lighter, right? Somewhat blurred, right? And it is referred as the penumbra region. So in a shadow, we can observe these two areas. So in the same way, here also we can observe two different areas, right? So this area is the umbra, and there is a penumbral part too. So penumbra region, I can draw it to you like this by using a different color. So penumbra region, it's going to be like this. Yes. Okay. Now when the light rays are coming like this, you can observe the penumbra region. So this area, you can observe the penumbra region within this area. At the very middle, you can observe the umbra region. So people around this umbra region, which is in the blue color, can observe the total solar eclipse. Here the sun is going to entirely cover by the shadow of the moon. Okay, so the people who are living in this area will be able to observe sun, right? Will not be able to observe sun, right? Totally the surface of the sun is getting covered by the shadow of the moon. So people around this area will not be able to see or observe sun at all. However, these areas, within these areas, these two areas, as you can see here, which is in the like ash color, this is the penumbra region. So within the penumbra region, my dear children, people will observe the sun, but however partially. Partially in the sense means now here the shadow of the moon is getting somewhat covered. It's going to cover somewhat, some region, right? It's going to bother some region, only to a certain region. So in that case, my dear children, the people who are living in this area will not be able to will be able to observe the solar light or sunlight, but however partially. Means that like in evening time period, you know that when the sun is going down or sun is setting, when sun is setting, right, gradually the light energy given out by the sun is going to reduce. So at that time period, like that kind of a time period can be observed within that, for the people who are living in that certain area. Even though it is in the daytime, they will not be able to get enough sunlight because of the shadow of the moon, right? This is mainly occurring because of the penumbra of the moon. Penumbra of the moon. So like that way we can divide these solar eclipses into two main parts as like this, as you can see here in the blue color, the total solar eclipse, and for the areas in these, people in the areas like in these, they can observe the partial solar eclipse. So we'll be discussing about these things, right, when we are discussing about the lesson part, we'll be discussing about these things, right? Then my dear children, the second main incident, so this is how the solar eclipse is going to work. Mainly eclipses are occurring because of the Umbra and Penumbra of Earth and Moon, okay? Earth and Moon only, because you know that Sun is very far away from us. Earth is the one which is closer, Moon is the one which is closer to the Earth. So when the Earth is going to revolve around the Sun and when Moon is going to revolve around the Earth, these two incidents are going to occur mainly. Remember that. Okay, so I'll erase this thing. We'll be learning about this thing in detail. Right, we'll be learning about these things in detail when we are coming to study about eclipses. So I have just given you simple idea what does this eclipses means. So this is the first incident, my dear children. We can write this thing as what? The first and foremost incident. This is the solar eclipse. Solar eclipse. Right. So we'll write down. Let's remove these drawings first and we'll write down the first incident. So number one, solar eclipse. Solar eclipse. Solar eclipse. Right? So second one, my dear children, number two is, I can draw it to you like this. When you take the Sun, so you know that Sun is somewhat larger. So this is Sun. This is the Earth. And now this is the Moon. Okay, this is the Moon. So when Sun, Earth and Moon align in a straight line like this, here you can see that the Earth is at the middle or in between the Sun and the Moon. So in this case, my dear children, what happens? The people who are around in this area, this certain area, will not be able to observe the surface of this Moon. Why is that? It's because now if you draw it like in a different position like this, if I'm going to draw it in an different position like this, not in a straight line but in a line like this. So if you take this is Earth, in this area we'll assume that there is one person like this. So now you can see that the light rays which are being obtained by the Sun is going to bright out this portion of the Moon, so that the people in here can observe that portion very clearly. So we discuss this thing under the phases of the Moon, right? This is how the phases of the Moon is going to occur. You know that Earth is going to rotate and this one also going to revolve around our Earth. So because of that, you know that there are different phases which are going to occur within the Sun, within the Moon, right? So that's mainly occurring because of the light energy received by the Sun. So that light energy is getting reflected by the surface of the Moon. So that's why we can observe the Moon as a bright, it's going to emit a bright light during the night time period. Okay, so people who are living in this area will be able to see that surface. It's because that the light energy received by the sun is going to reflect and travel towards the person in here like this. So that's how we'll be able to observe the surface of the moon. But what happens if the earth is now at a position like this? If the earth is at a position like this, then my dear children, you can see that if the earth is like this, then my dear children, you can see that the moon is getting covered by the surface of the sun. So the shadow of the earth is going to fall on the moon, and the moon will be eclipsed by the shadow of the earth. So the people who are living in that area will not be able to observe moon, right, at a certain time period. So this is referred as the lunar eclipse. This is referred as the lunar eclipse. Okay, lunar eclipse. Suddenly the moon is there at the sky, but however, when time is going to pass by, suddenly the moon is going to disappear. That's mainly that's going to occur during the total lunar eclipse. And like that, like in the earlier case, there are two incidents: total lunar eclipse and partial lunar eclipse. Like that way, there are several kinds of eclipses, but I'm just talking about the usual way. Usually what happens when the surface of the shadow of the earth is going to fall on the moon, for a certain time period will not be able to observe moon, right, because the shadow of the earth is going to cover the surface of the moon, right? So this incident is referred as the lunar eclipse. So this is the brief explanation for a lunar eclipse. We'll be studying about the lunar eclipse in our next or further lesson part. Okay, so this is the simple explanation. This is how the lunar eclipse is going to happen. Same as the solar eclipse, my dear children. But however, within this time, the earth is going to come in between the sun and the moon. So that bright surface of the sun will not receive enough sunlight. Okay. Therefore, at a certain time, right, at a certain time period, the moon is going to disappear, or moon is not going to be visible for the people who are living in this certain area of the earth. Okay, right then. So I'll erase this part and we'll write down the second main incident related to the eclipses. So this is the second main incident, my dear children. First we studied about the solar eclipse. Then the second one is lunar eclipse. Right, lunar eclipse. So these are the two main incidents, two main marvelous incidents that we can observe within our solar system because of the revolution of the earth and the revolution of the moon. Okay, so now let's head on to see the first and foremost eclipse type, which is the solar eclipse. So let's study about the solar eclipse first. So the solar eclipses. The moon revolves around the earth once every 27.3 days. Once every 27.3 days. Now, this is the time taken by moon to revolve around or to complete one cycle around our earth. Normally or usually it's going to take 27.3 days. If you're going to round it off, usually it's going to take 27 to 28 days, right? 28 days, we can say it as 28 days because you know that 27.3 means it's going to the next day. So therefore we can say that 28 days. So moon is going to take nearly 28 days to complete one cycle around our Earth, or to revolve around our Earth. Okay. So during this journey, in some occasions, the shadow of the moon falls on the Earth. So like I said in the earlier case, during this journey, when sun, moon and the Earth is going to align in a one single straight line, the shadow of the moon is going to fall on the Earth. Okay. The sun is invisible fully or partially to those who are in the shadow area for some time. So like I said, my dear children, upon falling the shadow of moon, sun is going to be invisible for the people who are living in that certain area that receives the shadow of the moon. It can be partially or totally invisible. Partially invisible or totally invisible. Okay. This is called the solar eclipse. So this incident is the one which is referred as the solar eclipse. Solar eclipse. So my dear children, here the sun is going to be invisible fully or partially for the people in the shadow area of the moon. So this is called as the solar eclipse. This is called as the solar eclipse. So next point is given. We see the sun and the moon equal in size in the sky. Now this is a big problem, right? It's going to be a huge problem now. You know that sun is way more larger than the other objects. Right? That's the largest object that we can observe within our solar system, right? So the second largest one is the planet Jupiter. But however, when you compare it with the sun is way more larger than the Jupiter. We discussed that thing in the earlier chapters when we are discussing about the distances from the sun and about their diameters. I think you could remember the table. So within that table, we discussed that sun is the object that has the largest diameter, and the Jupiter is the second one, and Saturn is the number 3 when you take the solar system. And if you take moon and earth, like the diameter of those objects are very smaller when you compare it with the sun. But however, my dear children, you know that if you check the like sizes, if you compare the sizes of the moon and our sun, you may see that these things are like similar in size. Why? Even though sun is very large, when you observe the sky, right? When you observe the sky, you may have seen that the size of the sun is somewhat similar to the size of the moon. If it is larger, if it is that much larger, how we can observe it in the same size as the moon? It's because of the distance, my dear children. Mainly because of the distance. Now let's imagine like this. There's an ant who is very closer to you. There's an ant. Imagine that you are on a particular, a larger playground. Okay, a very larger playground. So you are standing at a corner, one certain corner. So there is an ant which is like in front of you, and you can observe that ant very clearly as it is somewhat closer to you. Let's imagine that there is another person, a friend of yours, at the far end corner of the playground. So that person will be observed by you, but however, you will not be observed, or you won't be able to identify him or her. Right? You will not be able to identify. Even though the person is very much larger than the ant, you will not be able to identify the person. Identify in the sense means you will not be able to say the name of his or her, because the person is now somewhat very far from you. So in the same way, my dear children, sun is very far away from us, but however moon is somewhat closer. So in that case, right, in that case, now in the that as the example which I took, right, if you are the earth, then that ant is the moon. You can see that even the movements of the ant can be observed. But however, the person who is at the very far end of the playground, that person is the sun. That person is the sun. Right? So here, the distance is the main reason. Distance is the main reason behind the creation of the same size sun as the moon. Because when the object is going to be far away from us, in that case, my dear children, the size of the object is going to be reduced. So that's why we can observe sun and the moon in the same size, right? It's because of the distance. So here it is given, we see the sun and the moon equal in size in the sky. The sun is a very large object. Moon is a very small object with respect to the sun. So I told you that when you compare the sizes of the moon and sun, my dear children, sun is very large, but however moon is somewhat smaller when you compare with the sun. It's very smaller, very smaller. But the sun is very far away from the earth and the moon. That's why we see them more or less equal in size. So that's why we can see the sun more or somewhat less equal in size. Okay. So actually, when you compare the size of the moon and the sun, those two objects are like somewhat similar in size. If you check it from here, from our earth. But however, my dear children, it's because of the distance, right? Earth is somewhat near to the moon, but however, earth is somewhat, like when you compare the distances, earth is very far away from our sun. But however, earth is very near to moon. That's why we can see the moon and sun in same sizes when you check the outer space, right? So the next point is given, because of this reason, moon can totally cover the sun during a solar eclipse. So you may get confused sometimes, if the sun is that much larger, how the moon is going to be able to cover up a certain surface, to cover up the entire surface of the sun. However, my dear children, not only the size but the distance also matters, right? The distance is also going to matter. So this is how the sun is going to be covered by the shadow of the moon, because the distance which is located from earth is very much far when you take the sun. Okay, so this is the main reason of covering the surface of the sun by the shadow of the moon. Remember that thing. Right then, so we'll head on to see what are our next contents. So here the occurrence of solar and solar eclipses given. So as I mentioned in the earlier diagram, when I was giving a certain when I was giving a certain explanation related to the solar eclipse, now you can check the clear image, the clear ray diagram of the eclipses. So as you can see here, these are the light rays given out by the sun. Okay, so the light rays will travel like this, as you can see here in the diagram, and sometimes they will intercept and travel like this. So according to that, my dear children, you can see here there are two different parts. There are two different parts created by the two different parts of the shadow created by the moon. So those two parts are named as Umbra and the Penumbra. I have named this thing in the earlier diagram also, Umbra and Penumbra. So you know that in the Umbra part, that's the sharpest area of the shadow. It's very dark in color. And if you take the Penumbra part is somewhat lighter, right? Somewhat lighter, somewhat blurred, right? Not as sharp as the Umbra, right? So as you can see, it's very clearly visible to us within the figure. So according to these two areas, my dear children, two main incidents of the eclipses, solar eclipses, can be observed. So let's head on to see what are the contents given in here. So two areas can be identified in the shadow of moon fallen on the earth. These areas are the Umbra and the Penumbra. So you can see here, it's very clear. Umbra part is very less, my dear children. As you can see, the Umbra part is very less. However, the penumbral area is somewhat greater. When you compare with the Umbra part, penumbral part is somewhat greater, right? Those who are in the Umbra, so the people who are living in Umbra area, within this area, the people who are living in this area, my dear children, right? People who are living in this certain area, right? So they will not be able to see the sunlight if the moon is going to be in this kind of a position. So here, those who are in the Umbra can see a total lunar eclipse. So therefore, the people who are living in this certain area can observe the total lunar eclipse. Entire surface of the sun is getting covered by the shadow of the moon, right? Moon is going to come in between earth and sun, so that the entire surface of the sun is getting covered by the moon. So the people who are living in that certain area on the Umbra part will not be able to see the sun, and the sun is going to be totally invisible for the people who are living in Umbra region for a certain time period only. So that's within the, for the people who are living within that area, my dear children, they can observe or they can see a total lunar eclipse. Total lunar eclipse. While those who are in the Penumbra can see a partial solar eclipse. So earlier it should be not solar, it should be not lunar, it should be solar eclipse, right? So total solar eclipse. Total solar eclipse can be observed for the people who are living in Umbra region, and while those who are in the Penumbra can see a partial solar eclipse. So the people who are living in Penumbra region, right? People who are living in this region will be able to observe, right? For the people who are living in this certain area will be able to observe partial lunar eclipse. So partial solar eclipse, right? Partial solar eclipse. Partial solar eclipse. So the people who are living in Penumbra region can observe the partial solar eclipse, and the people who are living in Umbra region can observe the total solar eclipse. So Penumbra, partial, Umbra, total. For Umbra, total solar eclipse can be observed. For Penumbra, partial solar eclipse can be observed. Umbra, total solar eclipse, and once again for the Penumbra, partial solar eclipse. So these are the two types of eclipses, right? These are the two types of eclipses that mainly happens with the shadow of the moon, which is going to fall on the earth. So these two eclipses are referred as partial solar eclipse and the total solar eclipse. Total solar eclipse and the partial solar eclipse. So the people who are living in Umbra region can observe a total one. Penumbra region can observe a partial one. Okay, right. So let's head on to see the other contents, my dear children. So here you are given with a figure once again, my dear children, to observe the or to identify the certain types of eclipses. Mainly we are discussing about the solar eclipses in this part now. So the main types of solar eclipses can be observed within the given figure here. So here once again, when the light is coming like this, here this is the moon. So the earth is not given at that part, at that particular part earth is not given. However, you know that earth is located at the right hand side. So as you can see here within the figure, my dear children, this certain area that covers the umbra part of the moon. So if the earth, if a certain surface is located within the umbra part of the moon, for those people, they can observe a total solar eclipse. Total solar eclipse. Like in the given figure, the surface of the sun is getting totally covered by the surface of the moon. Right? Surface of the moon. Actually, the shadow is the one which is getting falling around here. So, totally getting covered by the shadow of the moon. Like in the figure given. But however, for the people who are living in Penumbra region, so within the Penumbra region, my dear children, you know that that's the blur area, right? Here the shadow is somewhat blur and somewhat lighter than the previous Umbra region. So therefore, the people who are living in the Penumbra region will be able to observe only a portion, right? A partial or else a portion of the solar eclipse. So here a certain part is getting covered by the shadow of the moon. However, a certain part is now it's still been uncovered, right? Still been uncovered, or it's still the people who are living in that area still can observe a certain part of the sun. So that part is going to emit the light, but however, major or majority region is being covered. So suddenly, if they are living in daytime period, like around 12 to 1 p.m., right, the light energy received by the sun is going to dramatically reduce, like in the evening time period, because of this partial solar eclipse. Okay, because a partially, like if you take the sun, a portion of the sun is going to emit light, So the other portion is going to be covered by the shadow of the moon. So partially they are receiving sunlight. So in that case, dark is going to fall, but however up to a certain level only, not entirely getting dark like this. Here the entire surface is getting dark. Okay, entire surface is getting dark, right? So this is the partial solar eclipse which is going to occur within the Penumbra region, my dear children, Penumbra region. Then here at the corner in this region, you can observe the annular solar eclipse as like given in the figure. So let's head on to see the description given. So umbra of moon covers an area about 160 square kilometers of the earth. So normally umbra of the moon is going to cover an area of 160 square kilometers, somewhat a larger area, right? So it's going to cover 160 square kilometers. 160 square kilometers is getting covered by the umbra of moon. This area moves because of the rotation of earth. It means that the umbra travels along the surface of the earth. Now the other thing is that when the moon is going to rotate, right? Actually the correct term is when moon is going to revolute around the sun, right? Not the sun, around the earth. So when this thing is going to revolve around the earth, the shadow of the moon also going to change the position. Shadow of the moon is also going to change the position of it. So here it's given that this area moves because of the rotation of the earth. So upon the rotation of the earth and upon the rotation of the revolution of the moon, both the cases is going to help to move this certain area. So you know that if the moon is there, if the earth is in here, you know that the earth is also going to rotate around the sun, and also moon is also going to rotate around the earth. So in that case, my dear children, this shadow is going to definitely move. It's not going to be in the same position for a longer time period. Okay. So it means that the umbra travels along the surface of the earth. So as the earth is going to move, this umbra is also going to move from one place to another. So the maximum time duration that a point of earth experiences a solar eclipse is about 7.5 minutes. Now, so my dear children, because of that rotation of the moon and the earth, okay, if you take a certain point, if you take a certain area, on that area, the people will be able to observe this solar eclipse only for about 8 minutes, maximum for about 8 minutes. Okay. Upon the rotation, this thing will be once again come to original situation because of the rotation of earth and the moon. Once again, right? Once again, the straight line thing or the alignment will be broken and usual daytime can be observed. So only for 8 minutes, maximum for about 8 minutes, right? Actual one is 7.5. 7.5 means 7 minutes and 30 seconds. But however, when you round it off, you know that we can take it for about 8 minutes. Only for about 8 minutes, or 7.5 is the exact amount. A certain person can observe the solar eclipse only for about 7.5 or 7 and 30 seconds only. Okay. And there's a special thing which is given here. What is that? Solar eclipse occurs on new moon days. So the solar eclipse is going to occur only on new moon days, my dear children. Right? There shouldn't be moon. There should not be moon, because moon should come in between the Earth and Sun? No. So in that case, we won't be able to observe the moon. So therefore, moon is going to be, therefore if the solar eclipse is going to occur, then in that case, my dear children, that day should be a new moon day. So within a new moon day only we can observe a solar eclipse. So that's why I told you that when you take solar eclipses are somewhat difficult, or those things are not getting often occurred in our space. Solar eclipses. The number of solar eclipses that's going to occur is pretty much lesser than the lunar eclipses. Okay. So these things are not that much often can be observed, these solar eclipses. Okay, remember that. Right, so my dear children, we have studied about the solar eclipses here, mainly about the solar eclipses. So now let's head on to the laboratory and we'll observe how does these solar eclipses are going to happen. And let's get a brief idea about the occurrence of solar eclipses. Okay, so now let's head on to the lab and we'll demonstrate how the solar eclipses are going to occur. So my dear children, as you can see here, this is the instrument that we use to demonstrate eclipses. So mainly within this part we'll be explaining how does a solar eclipse is going to occur. So this yellow color object, this one is the largest one, as you can see here. This blue color one is our planet Earth, right? So this larger yellow color one is our sun. So over here, as you can see, there is another small bit of an object. This one, this is the one which is referred as, or this is identical to our moon, right? So by looking at this instrument, you can see that the size comparison of the sun, earth and our moon as well, right? Okay, so when I'm going to move this arm of the instrument, you can see very clearly the earth is going to revolute around our sun like this, right? And as well as you can see that the moon, right, the replica of the moon also going to revolute around our earth like this. Once again, see, observe very clearly. When I am going to rotate this arm, the earth is going to revolute around the sun, and also the moon is also revoluting around our earth. So at a certain instance, what will happen, my dear children? The moon will come in between the line of our sun and the planet Earth. So in that case, the shadow of the moon is going to fall on the Earth. So that's how the solar eclipse is going to occur, right? So now within this environment, there is plenty of light, so we won't be able to observe it very clearly. So in order to observe this thing, my dear children, what you have to do? You have to put off all the lights and the room should be darker, right? So we'll dark our room and let's demonstrate how to observe the solar eclipse and how to study the solar eclipse. So my dear children, now as you can see here, now this is our sun, this is the moon and this is the planet Earth. Now all of these three objects are now on a straight line. As you can see here, this one, sun and the moon and the planet Earth is now on a straight line. So as you can see here, very clearly, the sun is now lighted up, right? So we are going to use a bulb in order to light up the sun, right? So in this space, the shadow of the moon is going to fall on these kinds of countries. On these countries now, they will experience a total solar eclipse. right? This is the shadow of the moon. Now for this area, right, for this area, sun is now completely being covered. How does it is getting covered? By the shadow of the moon which is falling on here. But for the countries over here, they will experience the sun, or they will experience the solar rays without any trouble. Only this part is going to experience the solar eclipse. As you can see here very clearly, this is the shadow of the moon which is falling on this particular area. So now you know that planet Earth and the moon is not going to stay on the same position. It's going to revolve. So when revolving like this, once again this straight line thing is going to disappear, and see, right, now the straight line thing is going to disappear. And my dear children, once again, for the people around this area, once again they will experience the solar energy or sunlight. So this is how to demonstrate the solar eclipse by using the instrument over here. So my dear children, once again, as you can see here, when these three are on a straight line like this, the shadow of the moon is going to fall on this particular space, or on this particular area, and that particular area is going to be covered by the shadow of the moon. So when I'm going to move it like this, right, as you can see here, you know that moon is going to revolve around our earth, so the position of the moon is not constant. Okay, so when I'm going to rotate this thing like this, the position of the moon once again changes, and the people around this area, once again they will experience the sunlight. Okay, so my dear children, this is how to explain or to demonstrate the solar eclipse. So once again we'll head on to our classroom and we'll study the further things related to the eclipses. So my dear children, we have studied, or we have demonstrated by using a particular instrument, how does the solar eclipses are going to occur. Now as you can see here, there is a certain experience given by a certain person. So an experience of a solar eclipse, especially given in here, experience of a solar eclipse. So Sri Lanka experienced a total solar eclipse on 20th June 1955. So the eclipse commenced at 8:11 in the morning, and after 7 minutes it was over at 8:18 a.m. So my dear children, on this particular day, on 20th June 1955, Sri Lanka observed, right? Sri Lanka observed an eclipse. So it was started at 8:11 in the morning, and after about 7 minutes it was finished. Okay, and it was finished around 8:18 in the morning. A person who experienced that solar eclipse described it as follows. So this was like around 45, then another 20, 22, so 60, about like 70 years, right? About 60, more than 65 years back, right? More than, it's around 70 years. Okay, more than 65. So it, my dear children, it was like a pretty much longer time period. About 60 to 70 years means a pretty much longer time period, right? So the experience is given like this. That day the sun was shining in the morning as usual. After 8 in the morning, it began to fall dark. Birds flew to their nests. fowls settled on trees. Environment got cold, sky darkened completely, stars began to twinkle. But moon was not there as it was a new moon day. So these are the changes that occur within the environment, my dear children, when like when the sun is when suddenly sun is there, sun is shining, but suddenly the sun is going to be darker, or sun is going to disappear from the space. It's because of the shadow which is falling on the sun. So here sun was shining in the morning as usual, but after 8 what happens? Began to fall dark. Birds who are wandering here and there, they once again flew back to their nests. Then fowls settled on the trees. Fowls came and they came to settle on the trees. Then environment got cold. You know that if the sun rays are not getting received enough, then like in the nighttime period, you know that the environment is going to be cool somewhat. Okay. Then sky darkened completely. Sky has got darkened completely because there is no sunlight. Then stars begin to twinkle. So we can clearly observe these stars also, because during the daytime, my dear children, stars are not going to move to a certain different location. During the daytime period, we won't be able to observe stars because of the sunlight. Stars are there, but however we won't be able to observe because there is plenty of sunlight. Okay, so when the sun is going to cover by the surface of the, or by the shadow of the moon, you know that sunlight is not getting received for the people who are living in that certain area. So they will be able to observe stars during the daytime also, because now it is the daytime now. But however they will be able to observe, as there is no plenty of sunlight within their environment. Okay. So however, even though the stars are there, the moon is not there, because you know that this is going to occur during a new moon day. Right. After some time, it dawned again. Birds come out of their nest. Fowls got down from the trees. Cattle came out from their lying places. Meteorological department announced in advance that a solar eclipse occurs on that day. Therefore, it was declared a school holiday. So, my dear children, after some time, once again, all the things came back to normal original situation like in the previous, right? So, the meteorological department already been informed for the people that there is going to be a solar eclipse on that particular day. So the schools were given as holidays. Okay, for that day schools are given with a holiday, right? So I never forget this incident, right? So the people who lived in that time period, they won't be able to forget, because it's a very special kind of an incident, right? It's a very special incident. So this is the experience of a solar eclipse, which is given with the note in here. So remember, the meteorological department, they are going to analyze these data and the rotations and the revolutions of the earth and moon, right? And they are going to predict upon the revolutions and rotations. They are going to predict when the next solar eclipse is going to happen. Is it a partial one or else a total one? So like that way they can predict. So, and those details will be given to the people. Definitely those details will be given to the people, the meteorological department. So after that, my dear children, again in 15th of January 2010, Sri Lanka experienced an annular solar eclipse. So after 1955, again in 2010, Sri Lanka experienced an annular solar eclipse. So there is a huge time period, right? From 1955 to 2010, there is like 55 years, right? So my dear children, like I said, it's very difficult to observe solar eclipses. So there is a huge gap between these two. So the second solar eclipse, clear solar eclipse, occurred on 2010, 15th January 2010 after 20th June of 1955. Okay, right then. So now we are going to observe, now we are going to discuss how to observe these solar eclipses. Okay, so as you know that we are going to check the surface of the sun here. We are going to check the, we are going to directly look at the sun. So you know that it's not good, or it's not probable to observe the solar rays from our naked eye. Okay, from our naked eye, it's not probable to observe the solar rays, because you know that there are very harmful light rays which are getting emitted by the sun. So light rays like ultraviolet rays, those are going to harm our skin and also for our eyes too. So it's not probable to observe solar eclipses from our naked eye. So there are several remedies. There are certain different kinds of ways which we can observe solar eclipses by using different not by naked eye, but however there are certain ways which we can observe, okay, by using different instruments. So now we are going to study how to observe a certain solar eclipse. So here it is given, solar eclipses should never be observed with naked eye. So like I said, these things should never be observed with our naked eye. Eye covers or goggles can be used for this purpose. So we have to use eye covers like this, or else these things are also referred as goggles. Welders also use eye covers. So you know that welders who are doing for the welding purposes, the people who are doing welding things, they use that cover, right? So those covers are going to help for the welders in order to protect from that bright light given out by the welding process. So like that way, my dear children, we have to wear those protective measures. Okay, we should never observe these things from our naked eye. So even using those aids, it is advisable not to watch the sun directly for a long time. Now, even though we are going to use those things, it's been advised to not to observe the sun for a longer time. Even though you are using those things, that might be harmful for your eyes. Okay, so it's very important not to observe the sun for longer time period, even though you are using those goggles or any other different kind of a instrument. Okay, so it's better not to observe these things from our naked eye. Okay, no matter which instrument you are using. Then if do not follow these instructions, will result in the blindness of your eyes forever. So because of those harmful light rays coming out by the sun, my dear children, there is a possibility that you might blind your eyes if you watch these things from your naked eye. So it's going to be a terrible case, right? It's very harmful to us. It's not good to observe these things from our naked eye. You remember it. So complete blindness may occur, right? So therefore, when you are looking at these things, just remember, don't look at the sun for a longer time period if you are using goggles or any other covering equipments, right? However, if you can use a certain basket of water and from that image you can check it, okay? From that image you can check it. Otherwise, you can use a telescope. If you are in the school, then you can use a telescope. So those are the probable ways in identifying and observing these things. So it is given once again, it is safer to watch the image of the solar eclipse taken onto a screen using a mirror or a telescope. So the best thing is to do is take an image of the eclipse, take an image of the eclipse to a certain surface, certain screen like this, then you observe. Okay, then you observe. So like I said, my dear children, you can keep a water basket, a water basin, you keep it in a you keep it in an open area. So by looking at the water surface, you can get a clear image of the sun. Okay, so by that way you can identify the areas, you can identify the solar eclipses. It's not good to it's not good to directly observe the sun, right? The probable way is observing an image taken onto a different screen. So most of you guys may at home during these incidents. So we won't be able to get telescopes because telescopes are not available at every home now. So in that case, my dear children, like I said, you can use a basin of water and you can keep it in an empty place or an open place. Then you can get the image of the sun, right, onto that particular water surface, and by that way you can check the solar eclipse, right? If you are using goggles or any other kind of a covering instrument, make sure not to watch for a longer time period. But however, it's better to not to look at all. Directly do not look at all. Use a certain type of a screen and get an image and then observe. That's the probable way to observe these solar eclipses, because light rays like ultraviolet rays will harm your eyes, my dear children, and you may get blind because of these harmful light rays. So this is the way of observing, right? This is the way of observing what? The solar eclipses. So as you can see here within the figure, the goggles, and within this image you can see taking the image onto a screen using a telescope. Now using this telescope to a screen, they have taken a separate screen, they have taken an image. So by looking at the image also, you can get a certain idea about the solar eclipse. So as you can see here, a partial solar eclipse is visible to the image. So you can see very clearly, this colorful one is the sun and this surface is the moon, right? Partial solar eclipse. So this is the way of observing solar eclipses, my dear children. You remember these key points. It's very important for you guys. Okay, right then. So indicated below are some solar eclipses observable in future in Sri Lanka. Actually, now these things are being passed. However, my dear children, if you take December 26, 2019, the annular eclipse, so this is pretty much visible, right? It was clearly visible to us, right? But not for the people who are living in Colombo area, but for the people who are living in, Jaffna, then like those area to north area, right, in Sri Lanka, it was very clearly visible. right? Then on 2020 also annual eclipse was there, right? So while the when the book is going to be printed, so the first print was given on around the 2018 no 2016 say 17 no, so therefore these things are given as the future, but however up to now these incidents are being now passed, my dear children. If you look at the internet and if you go for the meteorological department, they're going to announce when the next solar eclipse is going to occur. So if you want, you can get even more details from the internet, and you can keep that thing on your mind in order to observe a solar eclipse, my dear children. Okay, so my dear children, it's better that you go there, you visit that web page, and by that way you can get a certain idea about the next solar eclipses which are going to occur in Sri Lanka, right? And you can be prepared for those incidents, and you can like if you can get a telescope from a certain person, or you can borrow a telescope and you can observe it, or else you can be prepared to observe these solar eclipses, right? Because these things are going to be very rare, my dear children. So within your lifetime you will be able to observe maximum two, or maybe if you are very lucky 3, right? However, most of the times we won't be able to observe 2 or more than that, right? So therefore these things are very rare, my dear children. So try to obtain or try to observe at least 1. So within my lifetime I have experienced just a one, right? Just a one eclipse, annular eclipse. So I told you that on 2019 I observed this thing very clearly, right? So try to observe, you guys also try to observe these eclipses during your lifetime. Okay, so go for the meteorological department, go for their web page, and you can find out the details regarding the next solar eclipses. So my dear children, with that thing we are going to wind up this chapter regarding the solar eclipses. So in the next chapter we'll be studying about the next phenomena which is going to occur because of the rotations of Earth and Moon. So that the second one would be the lunar eclipses. However, lunar eclipses will be studied within our next chapter.
To watch these important lessons, subscribe to DP Education's YouTube channel right now. Click on the bell icon to stay updated on the latest lessons. Sri Lanka's largest free online school, DP Education.